It was a freezing winter morning, the kind that turned every breath into a cloud, when a boy no older than 16 crouched beside a rusted bicycle on the edge of a busy street. His hands were red from the cold, his nails black with grime, but his eyes, sharp, determined, never left the chain he was fixing. He had no gloves, no real tools, just an old screwdriver and a small wrench he'd found in a dumpster weeks ago. People walked past him without a glance, some stepping around him as though he were invisible. But to him, this wasn't just another broken bike. It was a chance, a rare one, to be useful in a world that had long ignored him. Ethan had been homeless for nearly a year, sleeping in alleyways, under bridges, and on nights like this, in the corner of a 24-hour laundromat when the owner didn't notice. His parents had both been gone before he turned 14, his mother to illness, his father to a car accident, and the foster homes had been worse than the streets. At least outside, the cruelty was honest. He'd learned to survive on scraps, odd jobs, and the occasional kindness of strangers. But kindness was rare, and trust even rarer. That morning, he'd been scavenging behind a bakery for stale bread when he noticed a man in his late 40s standing beside a sleek, matte black bicycle, cursing under his breath. The man's suit was immaculate, but his face was flushed with frustration as he fiddled with the pedals. Ethan saw it instantly. The chain had slipped, and one of the gears was jammed. He hesitated. People like that didn't usually want help from someone like him. But then the man's foot slipped and the bike tipped sideways. Without thinking, Ethan rushed over. "You'll strip the gear if you keep forcing it," he said quietly. The man looked at him, eyes narrowing. Ethan expected to be brushed off, maybe even yelled at. Instead, the man stepped back and gestured. "If you think you can fix it, be my guest." Ethan knelt, assessing the damage. The derailleur was bent, but the rest was salvageable. Working quickly, he slipped the chain free, realigned the gear, and tightened the bolts. He could feel the man's gaze on him, sharp and assessing, but he ignored it, focused only on the work. 10 minutes later, the bike was upright again, smooth as ever. The man tested it, riding in a quick circle, and stopped in front of Ethan. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. Ethan shrugged. "Picked it up, fixed up a lot of junk bikes for scrap money." The man's brow furrowed. "You in school?" Ethan shook his head. "Not for a while now." There was a pause, the kind that made the air feel heavier. "What's your name?" the man asked finally. "Ethan." The man extended his hand. "I'm Daniel." Ethan stared at the hand for a moment before shaking it, his grip tentative. Daniel reached into his wallet and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "For the repair." Ethan's stomach twisted. He could live for a week on that, but something in him hesitated. "It wasn't worth that much," he murmured. Daniel studied him for a moment. "Maybe not to you, but to me it's worth more than the money. You kept me from missing a meeting I've been working toward for years." Ethan nodded, tucking the bill into his pocket. He was about to walk away when Daniel stopped him. "Do you have somewhere warm to go?" The question caught Ethan off guard. He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Daniel exhaled slowly. "Come on, I know a place where you can get breakfast." Ethan followed at a cautious distance, half ready to bolt. But Daniel led him to a small cafe, ordered him a full breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, hot coffee, and didn't rush him. As Ethan ate like someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days, Daniel asked questions. Nothing too deep, nothing too prying. By the end of the meal, Ethan felt something he hadn't in a long time. Safe. When they stepped outside, Daniel said, "I run a small workshop. We repair high-end bikes. If you're interested, I could use someone with your skills." Ethan froze, unsure if it was a joke. "You'd hire me," Daniel nodded. "You've got talent, and I'm not the kind of man who ignores that." The job wasn't glamorous. The first weeks were spent sweeping floors, organizing tools, and shadowing mechanics. But Ethan learned fast. He asked questions, studied diagrams, stayed late to practice. For the first time in years, he had a place to go every morning, a reason to wake up. Daniel even helped him find a small apartment above the workshop, covering the first few months' rent himself. Months passed. Ethan's hands grew steady and confident, his eyes brighter. Customers began to notice the quiet, hardworking teen who could fix their bikes faster and better than anyone else. Daniel, true to his word, paid him well, but more importantly, treated him like family. One spring afternoon, Daniel called Ethan into his office. On the desk sat a gleaming custom-built racing bike, the kind worth thousands. "It's yours," Daniel said simply. Ethan blinked. I can't take that." Daniel smiled. "You can because you've earned it, and because a year ago you were fixing a stranger's bike on the street for nothing. I want you to remember that kindness isn't a one-way road. You gave it first." Ethan's throat tightened, his vision blurring. He thought back to that freezing morning, to the boy who had nothing but a screwdriver and hope. Now he had a home, a job, and someone who believed in him. He gripped the handlebars, feeling the cool metal under his fingers, and whispered, "Thank you." Daniel shook his head. "Thank yourself, kid. You just needed someone to see you." And for the first time in his life, Ethan believed he was worth seeing. Shorter, stronger version. On a freezing morning, 16-year-old Ethan knelt on a sidewalk, fixing a stranger's broken bicycle with nothing but an old screwdriver. Homeless and alone for a year, he expected no thanks, only to walk away invisible again. But Daniel, the suited man who owned the bike, saw something in him. After buying him breakfast, Daniel offered Ethan a job at his workshop. It wasn't easy, but Ethan worked hard, learning, growing, and finally moving into his own small apartment above the shop. Months later, Daniel surprised him with a custom-built racing bike worth thousands. "Because you gave first," Daniel said. Ethan realized then that kindness had changed his life, and it had started with his.